Hello, welcome to Tuesdays with Lloyds. This is your host, Enya. With technology advancing at an increasing pace, the future of insurance underwriters and insurance brokers are very much on the mind of many people, including myself. Today, leading discussions are Nigel of AEGIS London and Vanessa Macdonald-Smith of Oneglobal Broking. Those two, despite the fact they've been in the market for many years, their passion and energy are unmatched by many of us. So without further ado, please welcome Nigel and Vanessa.
Thank you, Enya. And I'm just hoping that you can all hear me. I'm off mute and ready to answer this very scary question. I have only got myself to blame for the fact that it's actually a scary question, because when I was talking to Enya about the subject for this session, I actually came up with a question, and it does sound slightly existential, doesn't it? You know, is there a future for us? And at risk of cutting this session incredibly short and finishing it off in a minute flat, the answer, I think you'll be delighted to hear, is yes. And I think probably what Vanessa and I want to try and explore today is, well, what does that future look like? The inference, I think, of the question is that the future will be different to what we've experienced, and even more so in light of what has been going on in the past 2 years, where the change in the way we do business has been incredibly profound. And there are many people out there that think that we've had 10 years of change in the 2 years that we've been plagued by COVID. And that's probably about right. I think we've driven ourselves forward in the way we do things. But my message to everyone should be, don't be frightened of the future, embrace it. Don't be frightened of technology, of AI, of digital trading. We've seen it in our day-to-day lives. We see it in the way we buy things generally. Why should insurance be any different? And from my underwriter's perspective, my role as head of distribution at AEGIS, I see very simply is to get our products through brokers to clients in whatever way those clients want to buy. So whether that's down traditional channels or digital channels, I don't mind. I'm really very agnostic about that. So I'm not in any way worried that digital trading is going to replace. On the contrary, it will merely complement what we already do. And I see a world on the underwriting side anyway, and I'll let Vanessa talk for the broking side in a minute. I see a world on the underwriting side of two types of underwriter developing. I think business that can be commoditized, smaller SME type business, which can be commoditized, will be commoditized. And larger open market risks will remain traded in a more traditional face-to-face way. And the type of underwriters that will evolve for those two types of doing business will be different. There will be a type of underwriter who will write digital business, who will probably be more sales, portfolio, marketing, data orientated. And then there will be the more traditional underwriter writing the individual larger risks, will be more technical, more analytical in the way they do things. Neither way is right, neither way is wrong. They're both appropriate for the way that commerce will be done in the future. So and I think I probably speak for the majority of underwriters, I'm not frightened. Of course, there's a future for underwriters. Of course, there's a future for the Lloyds marketplace. We need to do a lot, but I'm very optimistic and very excited about the future. Vanessa, are you in any way worried about the future for brokers?
No, and I think there's been a lot of chat about some of the portfolio underwriting that's gone on, or as we've mentioned, or you've mentioned, the AI platforms. But I agree with you, Nigel. I think there's a place for both. We're all conscious of the fact we have to do the right thing by the client. So for the classes of business that clients want to buy that is more commoditizable, then that should be done. I think, on digital platforms, because one, it's more convenient for them. It takes out time differences. It means there's set parameters that they can work to. And also it will probably reduce premium costs. And then you come on to what we call the risk managed risks. And I think still then the value of the face-to-face, and I'm talking about brokers and underwriters here, because I think this is the very important point. If we're saying about digital versus negotiated risk, we need to make sure that one, we're giving clients what they should be getting, which is a platform in Lloyds or a platform in London where they can come and meet entrepreneurial people. Lloyds has always been known for being very entrepreneurial and coming up with solutions for clients rather than prescriptive products. And we know that many of our clients are very different and have very different needs. And therefore, we've got to make sure that we're giving them what they want. And I think, Nigel, you and I had a chat a couple of weeks ago and reconfirmed it more recently that, interestingly, in the last 2 years through lockdown, many clients didn't move business around from either underwriters or brokers and stuck with what they had for, I guess, a number of reasons, partly out of fear, partly out of choice. Lack of choice, because they couldn't see other brokers, other underwriters. No one was allowed to travel, and therefore we did find that a lot of business stayed where it was. Some customers probably were very satisfied with that, but we know many customers were not, and probably didn't feel that they got either the choice or the benefit of different solutions that they might have had in the past. There weren't many tenders, and I think a lot of brokers did really well. A lot of underwriters did amazingly, bearing in mind they were inundated with offers from all over the place, which they, had to try and manage on their own. But there was a lot of lazy transacting in that time as well. The stock line that we as brokers hated, and I'm sure that the other side from underwriters being spam broked, was not within appetite, and I'm not sure what not within appetite always means, but we do still value, and I think there will always still be a place for the face-to-face broking.
Yeah,
and I think you feel the same.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think one of the messages we would like to get across today to all of you is we're open for business. Lloyds is open for business. We want to see people coming from the United States. Actually, I'm coming to the United States the weekend. I'm heading to Boston on Saturday, and looking forward to that. But we want to see you over here in the way that you always have traveled to see underwriters. I think Lloyd's challenge is not so much its relevance or its market share. I think one of the things that we will address through digital trading and AI is cost. Vanessa and I were talking about the cost base of doing business in London, which is traditionally a little bit higher. And Lloyds have been very, very vocal in terms of how they're going to address reducing that cost base. And it has to be done through digital trading. Now, digital trading, in my view, should do one thing. It should make doing business easier and cheaper. And the beneficiaries of that will be clients. No one else, not the broker, not the underwriter. It will be clients. And so embracing digital trading, AI, and all that goes with it will be to the benefit of our clients. And that is where we need to look to, not to say, well, how can we cut out that underwriter, or how can we eliminate that broker? That is not the point. That's not what this is about. It's about trying to attract more profitable business to Lloyds to the benefit of the end customer. And if we look at it that way, then who wouldn't embrace digital trading? I mean, we've certainly changed and shaped our business. We now at AEGIS have a digital trading division specifically geared up to do online quote and bind business. And so we're looking at that. We're looking at our business in a very different way, but still maintaining a laser focus on that stuff which we know adds value to client, which is the face-to-face trading. And have you seen, Vanessa, in your business, the way that you've traded in the past 2 years change in that context?
Yes, I think probably the whole world has, Nigel, and we are aware that probably better than we ever expected, that you can work remotely. I think many of our IT departments excelled themselves in getting us, connected and up and running, and as well as they did. We now know that we've got a generation of people who have reflected in the last 2 years and want a better work-life balance, and there's no reason that can't happen. However, I do think, we're obviously a growing broker. We're trying to fill that space that perhaps, a JLT or others who have been, merged and taken up, filled before. And we do want to make sure that we have people that are connected with each other in the office, so that we're sharing ideas, and also within Lloyds. So the fact we've gone further forward in 2 years, probably I would say less than more than 10 years forward. We've been trying to get digital trading platforms up and running for the whole of you and I's careers, Nigel. I think we've heard people talk about electronic trading for 30 years, and we were forced into it, and that was great. So there is, I think, a much more welcoming and as you said earlier on, less fear factor about digital trading and online platforms than there was before. And also people do see that there is still the role that can be played with the client involved and the market and the broker, that shouldn't worry about the digital era, because there's still going to be plenty for all of us to do. And clients' needs are becoming more and more complex, depending on which industry you're in, clearly. But whether it's, we've seen a lot of wildfire submissions coming in from many of you in the US, because some of the capacity hasn't been there, and Lloyds have been providing some brilliant solutions. Those sorts of things can't necessarily be done online, and so you do need people to come in. However, the more of that need that's there, the more that can be possibly commoditized within some parameters. So again, we've got to sort of, I think, be very nimble and very proactive, listening to what our clients want, listening to the products that our underwriters, such as you, Nigel, and many others are offering, and making sure that those products are as accessible as possible to our client base, and cover the needs. And I think what we shouldn't stifle with all this is the entrepreneurialism that I still believe exists in the London market.
Absolutely, and Lloyd's is a very fertile incubator of insurance product. It has been since its very genesis over 300 years ago, and that role won't change. You can't treat brand new products with AI. You can't commoditize a brand new product. You've got to feel your way into it, and Lloyd's underwriters are past masters at doing that. And in the world of emerging risk, it's only through people who are bold, as Lloyd's underwriters traditionally are, who are able to accommodate that type of risk. So when you look at risks that have emerged over the past 50 years, things like D&O, things like cyber insurance, things like kidnap and ransom insurance, and things which are relatively new, have all emerged from Lloyd's because people have got the boldness, the innovation, and the entrepreneurial spirit to do it. Machines and digital trading won't replace that. They will commoditize business, as we've said before, that can be commoditized. But bright young people will come to our business because it remains a people business, but it will only remain a people business if we strip that cost out. I travel by and large the length and breadth of North America, and I'm very fortunate to meet some wonderful people, cover holders, clients, and to a man and a woman, and I'll use this word, they cherish Lloyd's, and that's lovely. I mean, it really is a marvelous thing, but we cannot at Lloyd's rest on our laurels and assume that we will always be cherished in that regard, because if we price ourselves out of the market because we don't strip cost out and embrace digital trading because we're scared of it, we will soon become irrelevant and we will soon become too expensive. And what I like to hear from customers is, well, what is it that we get right? What is it that we get wrong? What is it that we can do more of? I was a broker for most of my career before I joined AEGIS on the underwriting side, and I've encouraged our people at AEGIS to have what I call outside-in thinking, and to think about, well, what do customers want to buy rather than what do we want to sell? How do they want to buy it? And I love to hear from people, and anyone on this call, to say, well, how do you want to do business? Do you want to do more digital trading? Do your clients tell you the need for it? Because it's up to them. They drive this. Or do you like your annual visit to Lloyds? Do you want that to continue? Do you want to support the marketplace in a face-to-face way? And we very much hope that you do, albeit supported by a way of trading which is more digitalized, because it takes away some of the arcane and burdensome manual labor that is associated sometimes with transacting business at Lloyd's. That would be my take on it. Now, if you want to disabuse me of that notion, get on the wires and start typing up saying, no, Nigel, you got this completely wrong. We want to digitalize the placement of the United Airlines fleet, or we want to digitalize the placement of a large financial institution. Hard to do, but you may think that is the end game. I personally don't think that is the case. I think the other thing that, Vanessa, you're quite strong on this as well, is the training of young people and how that might have been impacted by new ways of working. It troubles me, but I know it troubles you. What are your thoughts on that in this changing world we live in?
Yes, I think one of my big fears is that if we go to too much digitalization and not enough transacting, that how do we get the next generation to learn the trade? You can take exams. Obviously, many of us have. Some of us haven't taken as many as others, but that's textbook stuff. What I found so valuable in my career was actually learning from underwriters and being able to teach some, as a broker, some of the more junior underwriters, some of the things that I'd learned along the way. And if we lose that, and we lose that ability to negotiate, and we get back to computer says no, we're stifling innovation. We're stifling what Lloyd's has been great at, which is, as you said, Nigel, a minute ago, producing bright young sparks, bright young people that have got modern ideas, probably far more modern than Nigel and I, who've been in the market, many years. I mean, we're at the end of our careers. We want people that at the beginning of their careers to think this is a really exciting place to be, so that we come up with the same sort of innovation for our clients. But I think the two can exist side by side. We're talking about, Oneglobal has a portal, and we've done some of the digitalized product distribution for things like terrorism and parametrics on our portal. But behind that, and the same thing, Nigel, for your online platform, there still has to be an underwriter that devises the parameters for any digital type of underwriting, as there is when we go on to Direct Line or our travel insurance companies. There's still somebody that, and some of it's actuarial, but there's somebody behind that. So there's going to be a need for underwriting skills, and some of those underwriting skills, if it's more digital, are going to turn into what Nigel's describing as more distribution and sales. So I think the interesting thing going forward is that the division between the skill base of an underwriter and a broker is at some point going to become quite blurred, which is a good thing. Brokers can become join underwriting companies to help with sales and distribution and find out what clients want. They don't necessarily have to be the risk managed, technically trained underwriter, but then you still need the technically trained underwriters to look at the complex risks. So I do think going forward, we're all much more used to a digital world. I never thought I was ever going to be traveling with just my mobile phone with everything on it, including every credit card, everything that you could want. If you told us that 20, 30 years ago, we'd have all laughed at you. And times have moved on, as Nigel said earlier, in our personal lives, as well as our corporate lives. So, but we must keep this training side of things going. Otherwise, we're in danger of fizzling out at some point. So the balance, I think, is very important.
And just before I go on any further, Vanessa may consider herself towards the end of my career. All I'm prepared to be, I'm almost certainly in the second half of my career. That's as far as I'm prepared to go on that one. And on that note, talking about traveling around with just a phone. You know, I'll be traveling to the States next week with an iPad, which will be able to quote, bind and issue policy documentation in a matter of minutes to anyone that sits down opposite me. Now, again, I never thought, one, that it would be possible to do that, but even more bizarre, I never thought that I would to do it myself. But it's so simple that I can. But again, it's business that can be commoditized. But at risk of, you know, we mustn't poo-poo the idea of AI and how it can help. And we've got some great examples in the London market of emerging syndicates who are doing things very differently. I think of the Brit Key Syndicate, I think of the Beazley Follow Syndicate, where they are sort of algorithmically driven capacity providers. But they will be capacity providers sitting behind a leading underwriter who's got the knowledge and the expertise, who has worked with a broker who understands profoundly his or her client's business. So you've got to have that original transaction which says leading underwriter, broker, deep understanding of the business before someone like a Key Syndicate or a Beazley Syndicate maybe commits capacity automatically behind it. That, I think, is appropriate. That is completely understandable. And what those syndicates are trying to do, they're trying to say, okay, we're going to take a huge amount of cost out of the business because we're not going to have so many underwriters. We're going to build an algorithm and we're going to commit capacity behind a leader. Now, I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect that because of this slightly, and I'll use that term advisedly, the slightly indiscriminate nature of committing that capacity behind a leading underwriter, their loss ratios may be a little higher than the stock pickers, if you like. But if they can achieve the trade-off for slightly higher loss ratio versus greatly reduced expense ratio, which they may well be able to do, then it'll be a very interesting development for the market, and one that I think we eagerly follow. And so, you know, Lloyds, again, back to Lloyds, the innovative hotbed incubator, I think I called it earlier. All these sorts of things are signs of a marketplace that is vibrant, that remains entrepreneurial, and we like to think remains, if not the epicenter of world insurance, it's certainly one of the most preeminent centers of world insurance where we hope you still want to come and do your business. So all these changes in the ways we work are things for us to embrace, and we at AEGIS try and embrace them. Vanessa, maybe you can talk a little bit about, you know, what you're doing at Oneglobal and your response to things like the Key Syndicates and the Beazley Follow Syndicates, and do they represent a good opportunity for you and your clients and ways of helping reduce cost, or do you see them as being a threat?
No, I think, you know, anybody providing capacity in the market that benefits our clients is never a threat. I think it's very welcome that they're around and providing capacity. And there's been a lot of new syndicates, obviously, that have also sprung up, you know, in the last 2 years, which again is refreshing to see. And you know, Lloyd's allowing some fresh, I guess, capacity to come in, whether it's Inigo or IQ Underwriting, or some of the MGA capacity that's come in there. So no, I think threat, and I don't think these follow syndicates threaten the existing long-term syndicates either, really, in many ways. I mean, I think some people are going to have to keep on their toes to make sure that they embrace market share. But again, I think much of this can work side by side. You know, I was in RIMS in a couple of weeks ago at the beginning of April, and it was really refreshing and actually somewhat amusing, I guess, to see the enthusiasm for everyone finally getting out and meeting each other again. There were many Lloyd's underwriters there. There were a lot of clients. There were a lot of brokers. And there was a really good general buzz. So I think even if we end up digitalizing much more of the products and commodities, there's still going to be a need for people to sit and discuss amongst each other, you know, what solutions they need, what products they need, how they need products to differ. And maybe it's all because, you know, we feel like we've, you know, been let out of a cage after 2 years of being trapped. But there was a high degree of energy I felt at RIMS, and I'm sure many of you who were on the call that were there would probably concur with that, and a great excitement about being able to go out and meet each other. So again, I think the two sides can work hand in hand. And as Nigel, you said, from a Oneglobal point of view, we see this as a great opportunity because we are nimble, we are independent, we're building out our resource base and our network. We hope on very much on the front edge, we're making sure that we've got people in the office probably 3 to 4 days a week. Many other brokers are taking that in a slightly different hybrid way, but we feel that the more we can connect with different new specialty lines that we're putting on the books, whether it's energy or financial lines or cannabis products or some of the more traditional marine lines, the more we can connect with ourselves and therefore our client base, the better it is. So we probably have a slightly different view than maybe some of the larger brokers.
And I'll concur. I'll echo what you say. I was in Canada a couple of weeks ago, my first trip out there, where we do quite a lot of business, and I was sort of welcomed a bit like the prodigal son. It was wonderful actually to be back out there, seeing people face to face and seeing the joy of doing business. I worried, and it's actually a sort of way of looking at digital faceless, if you like, trading. I worried for young people in lockdown. I worried from sitting at home trading, dealing on Zoom calls without any human interaction. It's not a healthy way of doing business in all sorts of ways. And so I do think we have to, back to my point, embrace the technology, but don't see it as something that's going to replace what we do. See it as something that's going to complement what we do. And we should all, whether the people on this call are retail brokers, wholesale brokers, risk managers, it's a question of how can technology help me? How can it make me better at what I do? If you look at it that way, you will embrace it. If you look at it and say it's going to do me out of a job, it will do you out of a job. It's really very simple. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So where I see people burying their heads in the sand and saying, I'm not going to embrace this, I think they're the ones that will disappear. The ones that put their arms around it will see just how much good it can do, how much more choice it can afford clients, how much cost it can take out of the business. Because one of the things that it does is it future-proofs our business. If you look at other industries, Vanessa and I were talking earlier about travel agents. In days of yore, when we went on holidays, we all went to a travel agent. We don't go to travel agents. Travel agents don't exist anymore because we do things in a very different way. Our buying habits have changed. Sometimes it's a good idea to stop and think about your buying habits. I'll give you a personal example. I love books. I'm a great book reader. Now, sometimes I'll buy a book on Amazon. I'll just get it delivered to the home. But most times I go to an independent bookshop in London. Now, I might pay a little bit more money at that bookshop, but I walk in there and they'll say, good morning, Mr. Roberts. How are you? Lovely to see you. Have you seen the new book by so-and-so? We think you'll really like it. They know me. They understand me. They know my buying habits. They know what I like. I'm prepared to pay that little bit extra for that level of service. So depending on what it is I want to buy, that dictates the route down which I buy it. Again, I don't think insurance is any different. I think our clients will look at various different ways of buying insurance. And if we cannot offer all routes, ranging from digital to very traditional, if we can't offer those routes, we do ourselves a disservice. So my message really is embrace, adopt, don't be frightened. Digital trading is here to stay, but also brokers and underwriters are here to stay because there is value in both.
Well, I think then, we're coming to the end of this. I'm sure, there's probably questions from the audience or comments from the audience, but in summary, yes, there is a future for the underwriter and the broker. Yes, there is still a future for the skill base that's been around for a long time, and that the digital side goes alongside it, and we should be, as Nigel said, embracing that. But there's definitely a future for the skill base that we currently embrace in Lloyds and in London.
So I'd like to hear if there are any complementary views, contradictory views, controversial views, things that you think we might not have touched, might like us to have touched on. Please, Enya, if you fielded any questions, or if anyone's got any questions, please send them in, because
one on here, Nigel, this is actually a really good question. Somebody said, do you think the use of the underwriting room at Lloyd's will decline during the 10 years or so or not? And I think that's a really, really good question. What I would say is that we have a bit of a catch-22 going on in London at the moment, which I know John Neal is making great efforts to try and change. As people have started to come back into the city, we constantly hear from one side or the other. I talk to some underwriters I know who go, well, you know, we're not really going into the room very much because brokers aren't in there. It's not worth our while. And then I sort of task my brokers to go out in the market, and they come back and say, well, there weren't, many underwriters in there. So I think as life gets back to normal, and we are really, really going down that route far more, that the underwriting room will still stay relevant. Why? We could go and see underwriters in their offices, but what that stifles is the youngsters coming up. And I guess I have to be careful what I say by youngsters, but our experienced brokers who are probably the 5 to 10 year levels, who will be able to go in and sit down with an underwriter, don't have to make an appointment. It's off the cuff. They've got a slipcase full of risks that they want to discuss. And they can sort of flit around and actually get an audience with them. And certainly for brokers like Oneglobal and many other of the what I call the mid-tier brokers, who aren't going to necessarily want to commandeer a morning's appointment like some of the top 3 or 4, and or that those appointments would only be manned by a certain number of people or senior people. It gives much more breadth to the brokers to be able to go in and get face-to-face meetings with underwriters. And that's part of the training that I'm very concerned that we're going to lose if we do all digital. Are we going to lose that room over 10 years? Very interestingly, they tried through lockdown, Nigel, and you might want to comment on this sort of very soon after I finish this comment. They did a virtual Lloyd's room. I think some people found it okay, but most people still then did Teams meetings or mobile phone calls. So I think we're probably caught between one or the other. It's either going to continue in much of the format it is, or it possibly won't continue at all. I sincerely hope that it does continue as a room, because I think that is where a huge amount of ideas are exchanged. It's also where underwriters also mix, a lot, or see each other. And to take that away, I mean, you could make the effort to do it outside of the room, but I think the room has a particular je ne sais quoi. And also for clients, there's something quite special about Lloyd's. Nigel?
Yeah, I agree with something special. I'm not sure. I don't share your confidence. I think Lloyd's need to change. I think you'll see the new Lloyd's will be a very informal place. I don't think you'll have an AEGIS box or a Beasley box or a Hiscox box or a Kiln box. I think it'll be an informal meeting place. And I think you might find that Edward Lloyd was one of the most ahead of his time human beings that ever existed, because I think the notion of the coffee shop will return, and it will be an informal meeting place where people can come and do business. So I see it as we've developed a hybrid way of working as people. I mean, my home is Scotland, so I'm in London for most of this week, but my home is Scotland, and I work from home there probably 2 days a week. So I've got a hybrid way of working. I see the new Lloyd's as being hybrid. So no fixed boxes. It'll be much less formal, but it will be a hub where people can come and discuss business.
There's another question on here which you could answer, which goes along that. which is, do you feel the professionalism of the Lloyd's underwriters might decline as digital working increases?
No, actually, I think it will increase. There's and it will increase because it will be bifurcated in the way I've just described. The need for an underwriter to understand facultative open market business will not diminish in any shape or form. But the professionalism of an underwriter is writing a digital book, which will be much more looking at data analysis and portfolio management, will be an increasing skill. So we'll see a bifurcation of skills of the underwriter. And young underwriters will say, well, actually, I'm more of the salesy marketing portfolio type, or I'm the more sort of analytical type. So I don't think at all that the skills of the underwriter will diminish. I think the skills of the underwriter will expand, that they will be different and they will be enhanced.
But they will be very separate to an extent. And I guess that's where our employment practice will change going forward, because you won't necessarily be looking for the same style of people for one side to the other. You know, obviously, from an underwriting point of view, I guess, Nigel, in the past, you know, you're looking for people that are bright, that perhaps have an engineering degree, that have got, you know, an aptitude for figures, geographies, whatever it might be. And that might be somebody that you keep on the technical side and the risk managed side, and somebody that's much more gregarious, able to do sales, you know, ice to Eskimos, if you like, goes on the more digital and distribution side. But that's going to be very much down to, I guess, what path and what percentage of the products that we have going forward become digitalized versus not. And I think to the question that somebody meant about, you know, 10 years time, maybe Nigel, you're right, maybe I am too optimistic, because things do change very quickly. But you know, I'd like to think that there is still going to be a modicum of negotiated trading, and also somewhere that the clients can still come to and feel is relevant. One of the reasons our clients love coming to London, and many of you who are on the call, I'm sure, are in this category, is you can come and see, I don't know, could be 50 underwriters all at once in a week, get some really good time, really good ideas. And you probably can't do that in many places in the world, actually. So, you know, I think we've got to make big strides to keep Lloyd's and London relevant. Obviously, we're not the only marketplace in the world, and we're not saying that by any means, because, you know, there are other significant hubs for insurance and reinsurance. But, you know, we must make sure that Lloyd's and London stay in that relevant space.
I see another question in about the granularity of data to make algorithmically follow syndicates viable or short term. It's a very good question, and the answer is obviously no. I mean, there's probably not enough data, but it won't take too long to establish that. I think they've started at a good time, given the fact that the market is relatively hard. I think if these syndicates had started at the bottom of the cycle, some of them might have struggled and capital providers might have asked questions. I think if they can demonstrate that the as I talked of, the trade-off of loss ratio to expense ratio works, I think they will survive the dangerous early years. All syndicates in the early years have got, it's a very difficult time to start. You know, you're burdened with cost, and because of the nature of insurance premiums and the earning power of premiums, you know, you tend not to be able to release profit for several years, even on a short-term book. So they've started at the right time. They will develop the data that they need, but right now they are undoubtedly a calculated gamble. But I do think that they're a sensible gamble. I do think that they are a risk worth taking, because, as always with Lloyd, someone's got to try, and I think the people who do them are bold, but not foolishly bold. So is there enough data? Not yet. Will there be? Yes. Can they survive the childhood, infancy years? I think they probably can. One or two may fall by the wayside. But But no, I don't think this is a cyclical thing. I think they're here to stay, is what I would say in response to that question. Was there another? There was another.
At the end of this, Enya, did you want to come in with anything before the session finishes? I think we've probably had most of the questions on there answered.
Enya's normally.
Did we answer all the questions already, Nigel and then Vanessa?
Is that? I think there's one more, isn't there? Wasn't there a question? Is there one still up there? Oh no, there are no open questions. Enya, you normally ask impossible questions to answer. Have you got one of your usual impossible questions?
You know, I want to know what's on your mind. What keep you from the syndicate, and also you, Vanessa, from broker's perspective? What keep you up at night? What keep you, on your mind all the time? One simple question?
Me awake at night is what clients want. That's all. Are we getting it right for our customers? Now, the customers are brokers and policy holders. That's all I ever think about. I don't think about what we're doing. I think about what they want. So are we giving them the right types of cover? Are we distributing business in the right way? Are we relevant in their world? It's a question. It's a word I use all the time in business, is relevance. Are we product relevant? Are we price relevant? Are we culturally relevant? Are we operationally relevant? Are we relevant in your world? Because if we're not relevant in your world, there's only one way, and that's down. So that's what keeps me awake. I'm constantly looking at what people want to buy and how they want to buy it.
Thank you, Nigel.
I'd echo that, because we obviously have clients at our centre as well. But I would have to say that outside of that, which would be the first priority that keeps me and others awake, I do worry very much about how we're going to get the next generation trained and through the system and not through the system, but to develop their careers. Now, possibly I'm being kept awake for no reason, because it could change very much as we go forward in the future. But I have children that are in the market and in that sort of era. And I think it's very important that, as some of the senior managers, both on the broking side and the underwriting side, that a little bit more attention is given to that than I think is possibly being given. And that might be an unfair comment, because I know that there's lots of people that are doing training and so on. But I guess the benefit of that experience of being in the cut and thrust of the market and whether you can get that remotely bothers me a bit.
Fair said. Again, thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Vanessa. If I can take, I guess, one key message away from today's discussion is customer focused, what the clients want. How can we really use technology to benefit our clients and benefit our customers overall as a group? And also I want to challenge the audience, take Vanessa's question, how can you bring up the next generation of leaders? How can you nurture the next Nigel, the next Vanessa in your team and bring up the new leadership for our future of the industry? I think that's all on our mind as well. So thank you so much again. And for the audience, thank you for being part of today's discussion. And please take a few minutes for a quick survey at the end of this session. Also, our next session is coming up. It's May 17th. We may have a little change there. We'll keep you posted. At the same time, stay healthy and stay connected. Thank you again.
Thank you.